Welcome, adventurers and history enthusiasts, to strange original fairy tales and other stories. It is good to see you. Today we're diving into yet another one of the most thrilling and mysterious sagas of Norse exploration and conquest. Imagine setting sail across the treacherous North Atlantic in the late 10th century, venturing into uncharted waters and discovering new lands. That's exactly what the Vikings did, and their incredible journeys are immortalized in this epic saga. The saga tells the story of fearless explorers like Eric the Red, who founded the first Norse settlements in Greenland, and his son, Leif Erikson, who is hailed as the first European to reach the shores of North America long before Columbus. But the saga doesn't stop with Leif's journey. We'll also meet other bold adventurers like Thorvald Eriksson, Thorstein Eriksson, and the formidable Freydis Eiríksdóttir. Their tales of bravery, resilience, and encounters with the native peoples of Vinland are nothing short of legendary. Join us as we explore this captivating blend of historical facts and legendary storytelling passed down through generations in medieval Iceland. Discover the spirit of adventure that drove the Norse to the edges of the known world and beyond. So, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Let's embark on this incredible journey together through part 2 of the Vinland Saga, the Saga of the Greenlanders. Adventure awaits. Chapter 1: Greenland discovered and settled. There was a man named Thorvald, son of Asvald Ulfsson, Ox Thorisson. Thorvald and his son, Eric the Red, were forced to leave Jæren for Iceland due to some killings. By then, Iceland was widely settled. They first lived at Drangar on the Hornstrandir. There, Thorvald passed away. Eric then married Theodild, the daughter of Jorund Ulfsson and Torbjorg Shipbreast, who was married to Torbjorn of the Haukadal clan. Eric moved north and settled at Eiríksstaðir near Vatnshorn. Eric and Theodild's son was named Leif. After the killings of Eyjolf the Foul and Hrafn the Dueler, Eric was outlawed from Haukadal. He went west to Breidafjord and settled at Eiríksstaðir in Oxney. He lent Thorgest his setstokker, wooden beams, and could not get them back when he demanded them. This led to disputes and battles between him and Thorgest, as detailed in Eric's saga. Styr Thorgrimsson, Eyjolf from Sviney, the sons of Thorbrand from Alftafjord, and Torbjorn Vifilsson supported Eric. Thord Geller's sons and Thorgeir from Hittardal supported Thorgest. Eric was outlawed at the Thorsnes assembly. He then prepared his ship for a voyage at Eiriksvag. When ready, Styr and others accompanied him out to the islands. Eric told them he intended to search for the land Gunnbjorn, son of Ulf Crow, had seen when he was driven west across the sea and found Gunnbjorn's skerries. Eric said he would return if he found the land. Eric sailed from Snæfellsjökull and found the land, coming ashore at a place he called Midjökull, now known as Blasakör. He then travelled south along the coast to see if the land was habitable. He spent the first winter on Eiriksey, near the middle of the eastern settlement. The following spring, he went to Eiriksfjord and established his home there. That summer, he explored the western uninhabited area and named many places. He spent the second winter in Holms, near Farfsknipa, and the third summer, he travelled north to Snæfell and into Hrafnsfjord, where he said he reached the bottom of Eiriksfjord. He then returned and spent the third winter on Eiriksey at the mouth of Eiriksfjord. The following summer, he sailed to Iceland and brought his ship to Breidafjord. He named the land he had found Greenland, saying that a good name would attract people there. Eric stayed in Iceland that winter, and the following summer he began settling the land. He lived at Brattahlid in Eiriksfjord. Wise men say that the same summer Eric the Red began settling Greenland. About 35 ships left Breidafjord and Borgafjord, but only 14 arrived there. Some were driven back and some were lost. This was 15 years before Christianity was adopted by law in Iceland. That same summer, Bishop Friedrich and Thorvald Kodransson went abroad. These men claimed land in Greenland with Eric. Herjolf claimed Herjolfsfjord and lived at Herjolfsnes. Ketil claimed Ketilsfjord. Hrafen claimed Hrafnsfjord. Solvi claimed Solvadal. Helgi Thorbrandsson claimed Alftafjord. Hafgrim claimed Hafgrimsfjord and Vatna Verfi. Arnlaug claimed Arnlaugsfjord. Some went to the western settlement. Chapter 2. Bjarni Herjolfsson searches for Greenland. Herjolf was the son of Bard Herjolfsson. He was a kinsman of Ingolf the settler. Ingolf gave Herjolf land between Vag and Reykjanes. Herjolf first lived at Drepstokkur. His wife was named Thorgerd, and their son was Bjarni, who was a promising young man. He longed to travel abroad from a young age. He became successful in both wealth and respect, spending his winters alternately abroad or with his father. Soon, Bjarni had a ship for trading. The last winter he was in Norway, Herjolf moved to Greenland with Eric and left his farm. A man from the Hebrides, a Christian who composed the Hafgerdingadrapa, was on the ship with Herjolf. This is a refrain from that poem. I ask the tested guardian of monks for a safe journey without harm. May the Lord of the High Hall of the land hold me in his embrace. Herjolf lived at Herjolfsnes. He was a man of great renown. Eric the Red lived at Brattahlid. He was held in the highest regard, and everyone looked up to him. These were Eric's children, Leif, Thorvald, and Thorstein, and his daughter was named Freydis. She was married to a man named Thorvard, and they lived at Gardar, where the bishop's seat is now. She was very outspoken, while Thorvard was a weak man. She was very greedy for wealth. At that time, people in Greenland were heathens. That same summer, Bjarni arrived at Eirar with his ship, having learned that his father had sailed in the spring. This news greatly affected Bjarni, and he refused to unload his ship. His crew asked what he intended to do, and he replied that he planned to follow his custom and spend the winter with his father. And I want to sail to Greenland if you will accompany me. All agreed to follow his advice. Bjarni said, Our journey will seem foolish since none of us have been in the Greenland Sea before. Nevertheless, they set out as soon as they were ready and sailed for 3 days until they lost sight of land. Then the wind died, and northerly winds and fog set in, and they did not know where they were going. This went on for many days. After that, they saw the sun and could determine their directions. They raised their sail and sailed for a day before they sighted land. They discussed among themselves what land it might be, but Bjarni said he did not think it was Greenland. They asked if he wanted to sail closer to this land. He answered, I think we should sail close to the land. And so they did, soon seeing that the land was flat and forested, with small hills. They left the land to port and let the sail turn towards it. Then they sailed for 2 more days and sighted another land. They asked if Bjarni thought this was Greenland. He said he did not think this was Greenland either, because Greenland is said to have large glaciers. They soon approached this land and saw it was flat and wooded. Then the wind dropped. The crew suggested they should land there, but Bjarni refused. They felt they needed both wood and water. You are not short of either, said Bjarni, but he received some criticism from his crew for this. He told them to hoist the sail, and they did, setting off from the land with a southeasterly wind. They sailed for 3 more days and saw a third land. This land was high and mountainous with glaciers. They asked if Bjarni wanted to land there, But he said no, because this land seems useless to me. They did not lower their sail, kept the land to port, and saw it was an island. They again set their course away from the land and sailed into the open sea with the same wind. The weather worsened, and Bjarni ordered them to shorten sail, keeping only enough sail up to maintain control of the ship and its cargo. They sailed for 4 days. Then they saw the fourth land. They asked Bjarni if he thought this was Greenland. Bjarni answered, "This most resembles what I have heard about Greenland, and we shall go ashore." They sailed closer, landing at a promontory in the evening where there was a boat. Herjolf, Bjarni's father, lived on that promontory, which later took his name and has since been called Herjolfsnes. Bjarni went to his father and gave up his voyages, staying with his father while he lived, and then lived there after his father's death. Chapter 3. Leif discovers Vinland the Good. Following this, Bjarni Herjolfsson arrived from Greenland and visited Earl Eric, who received him well. Bjarni recounted his voyages and the lands he had seen. People thought he had shown little curiosity since he had nothing to report about those lands, and criticized him for it. Bjarni became one of the Earl's men and travelled back to Greenland the following summer. The talk about exploring new lands became widespread. Leif, son of Eric the Red from Brattahlid, went to meet Bjarni Herjolfsson and bought his ship, hiring a crew of 35 men. Leif asked his father, Eric, to lead the expedition. Eric hesitated, citing his old age and decreased strength. Leif insisted that Eric would bring the greatest luck to their journey. Eric eventually agreed and rode out with them when they were ready to depart. However, as they neared the ship, Eric's horse stumbled, causing him to fall and injure his foot. Eric remarked, "It seems I am not destined to discover more lands than this one we now inhabit. We will part ways here." Eric returned home to Brattahlid while Leif and his 35 companions, including a southern man named Tyrkir, set sail. They prepared their ship and sailed into the open sea, reaching the land Bjarni had last seen. They approached the shore, dropped anchor, and launched a boat to go ashore. They found no grass, only large glaciers and flat stone slabs reaching from the sea to the glaciers. The land seemed barren to them. Leif said, "We cannot say we did not set foot on this land, unlike Bjarni. I will name this land Helluland, Stone Slab Land." They returned to their ship, sailed further, and found another land. They approached and landed. This land was flat and forested, with wide white beaches and gentle slopes. Leif said, "This land shall be named Markland, Forest Land." They quickly returned to their ship. From there they sailed for 2 more days with a northeasterly wind until they saw land. They approached an island north of the mainland, went ashore, and found dew on the grass. They touched the dew with their hands and brought it to their mouths, feeling it was the sweetest thing they had ever tasted. They returned to their ship, sailed through the strait between the island and the mainland, and steered westward along the coast. There were many shallow areas at low tide, stranding their ship. They were so eager to explore the land that they did not wait for the tide to refloat their ship, but ran ashore where a river flowed from a lake. When the tide refloated their ship, they took their boat, rowed to the ship, and brought it up the river into the lake, anchoring there. They unloaded their belongings and made temporary shelters, deciding to spend the winter there and build large houses. They found an abundance of salmon in the river and lake, larger than any they had seen before. The land seemed so favorable that they believed no livestock would need winter fodder. No frost came during the winter, and the grass barely withered. The days were longer than in Greenland or Iceland, with the sun rising and setting directly. After completing their houses, Leif spoke to his crew. I want to divide our group into two, one half staying at the camp while the other explores the land, ensuring they return by evening and not stray far. They followed this routine for a while. Leif alternated between joining the explorers and staying at the camp. Leif was a tall, strong man, impressive in appearance, wise and moderate in all things. Chapter 4. Leif the Lucky finds men on a skerry. One evening it was noticed that a man was missing from their group. The missing man was Tyrkir, the southerner. Leif was greatly troubled by this, as Tyrkir had been with his family for a long time and had been very dear to Leif in his childhood. Leif reprimanded his companions and prepared to search for Tyrkir with 12 men. They had not gone far from their camp when Tyrkir came towards them. They greeted him warmly. Leif soon saw that his foster father was in high spirits. Tyrkir had a round face, twinkling eyes, a small stature, and a cheerful demeanor, but he was very skilled in various crafts. Leif asked him, "Why were you so late, my foster father, and separated from the group?" Tyrkir first spoke for a long time in German, darting his eyes in many directions and making faces which the others did not understand. After a while he spoke in Norse. "I did not go much farther than you. I have some new findings to report. I found grapevines and grapes." "Is that true, my foster father?" Leif asked. "Indeed it is true," he replied, "because I was born in a place where neither grapevines nor grapes were lacking." They slept that night, and the next morning Leif said to his crew, "Now, we must divide our tasks. Half of the time we will gather grapes, and the other half we will cut timber and fell the forest, so we have a cargo for our ship." This plan was agreed upon. It is said that their longboat was filled with grapes. They also cut a load of timber for the ship. When spring came, they prepared to leave and sailed away, naming the land according to its resources and calling it Vinland. They sailed with favorable winds until they saw Greenland and the mountains beneath the glaciers. One man then said to Leif, "Why are you steering the ship so close to the wind?" Leif replied, "I am mindful of my steering, but also keeping watch for something else. Do you see anything noteworthy?" They answered that they saw nothing worth noting. "I am not sure," said Leif, "whether I see a ship or a skerry." Now they saw it and said it was a skerry. Leif saw more clearly than they did, seeing men on the skerry. "I want us to sail towards it," said Leif, "so we can reach them if they need help. If they are not peaceful, we can still handle it." They sailed to the skerry, lowered their sail, dropped anchor, and launched their small boat. Tyrkir asked who was in charge of the group on the skerry. A man replied that his name was Thorir, and he was a Norseman. "What is your name?" Leif introduced himself. "Are you the son of Eric the Red from Brattahlid?" he asked. Leif confirmed it. "I want to invite all of you to my ship, along with any goods you have." They accepted the offer and sailed to Eriksfjord with their cargo until they reached Brattahlid. They unloaded the cargo, and Leif invited Thorir, his wife Gudrid, and 3 others to stay with him, while arranging provisions for the other crew members, both Thorir's and his own. Leif had rescued 15 men from the skerry, earning him the nickname Leif the Lucky. Leif continued to prosper both in wealth and reputation. That winter, a severe illness struck Thorir's group, resulting in many deaths, including Thorir himself. Eric the Red also died that winter. Leif's voyage to Vinland was much discussed, but his brother Thorvald thought the land had not been fully explored. Leif told Thorvald, "You can take my ship to Vinland if you wish, but first it should be used to collect the timber that Thorir left on the skerry." This was done accordingly. Chapter 5. Thorvald Eiriksson's journey to Vinland. Thorvald prepared for this journey with 30 men, advised by his brother Leif. They made their ship ready and set out to sea. There is no account of their voyage until they reached Vinland and arrived at Leif's camp, where they settled their ship and stayed quietly for the winter, fishing for their food. In the spring, Thorvald suggested that they should prepare their ship and have the ship's smaller boat with some men explore the western part of the land during the summer. They found the land beautiful and forested, with a short distance between the forest and the sea, and with white sandy beaches. It was very island-studded and had many shallows. They found no signs of human or animal habitation. However, on an island to the west, they found a wooden grain store. They found no other traces of humans and returned to Leif's camp in the fall. The following summer, Thorvald set out with the merchant ship and travelled east and north along the land. They encountered a fierce storm at a certain promontory, which drove them ashore and broke the keel of their ship. They stayed there for a long time, repairing their ship. Thorvald then said to his men, "Now I want us to raise the keel here on the promontory and call this place Kjalarnes, Keel Promontory." They did so. They then sailed away from there and eastward along the land and entered the mouth of the nearest fjord, anchoring by a headland that was all wooded. They docked their ship and went ashore with Thorvald and all his men. Thorvald said, "This place is beautiful, and here I would like to build my home." They then returned to the ship and saw on the sandy beach within the headland 3 mounds, and they went to investigate. They found 3 skin-covered boats with 3 men under each. They divided their group and captured all of them, except for 1 man who escaped with his boat. They killed the other 8 and then returned to the headland and looked around, seeing some heights within the fjord that they believed were settlements. After this, they were overcome with such great drowsiness that they could not stay awake, and they all fell asleep. A voice then called out to them, waking them all. The voice said, "Wake up, Thorvald, and all your men if you wish to save your lives, and get on your ship and leave the land as quickly as possible." An uncountable number of skin-covered boats then came from within the fjord and attacked them. Thorvald said, "We must put out our battle boards and defend ourselves as best we can, but fight back as little as possible." They did this, and the Skraelings, indigenous people, shot at them for a while, but then fled as quickly as they could. Thorvald then asked his men if any of them were wounded. They said they were not. "I have received a wound under my arm," he said. "An arrow flew between the ship's side and the shield and hit me under the arm. Here is the arrow, and this wound will be my death. Now I advise you to prepare to return home as quickly as possible, but you should take me to the headland that I found most suitable for a settlement. It may be that I spoke truthfully when I said I would stay there for a while. There you should bury me and place crosses at my head and feet, and always call it Crossanes, crossness, from now on." Greenland had been Christianized, but Eric the Red had died before the conversion. Thorvald then died, and they did everything as he had instructed. They then returned to their companions and shared their news. They spent the winter there, gathering grapes and timber for their ship. In the spring, they prepared to return to Greenland and arrived with their ship in Eriksfjord, bringing many newsworthy stories to life. Chapter 6. Thorstein Eiríksson dies in the Western Settlement. During the events in Greenland, Thorstein in Eiríksfjord had married Gudrid Thorbjarnardottir, who had previously been married to Thorir the Eastman. Now Thorstein Eiríksson desired to go to Vinland to retrieve the body of his brother Thorvald. He prepared the same ship and selected a crew of strong and able men, taking with him 35 men and his wife Gudrid. They set sail once they were ready, but were tossed about at sea all summer and did not know where they were. A week into winter, they made land in Lissufjord in the western settlement of Greenland. Thorstein sought shelter for his crew and secured lodging for all of them, except for himself and his wife, who remained on the ship for some nights. Christianity was still new in Greenland at that time. One day, early in the morning, some men came to their tent. The leader of the group asked who was in the tent. Thorstein answered, "Two people." "Who is asking?" "I am Thorstein, known as Thorstein the Black. My purpose here is to invite both of you to stay with me." Thorstein Eiríksson said he needed to discuss it with his wife, who told him to decide. He agreed to the invitation. "I will come for you in the morning with a cart. There is no shortage of provisions, but it is lonely at my place since it is just my wife and me. I am somewhat difficult to live with, as I am very stubborn. I have different customs from yours, though I believe yours are better." The next morning, Thorstein the Black arrived with a cart, and they went to stay with him, where he treated them well. Gudrid was a striking woman and wise, skilled in dealing with strangers. Early in the winter, an illness struck Thorstein Eiríksson's crew, and many of his companions died. Thorstein ordered coffins to be made for those who died, to be taken to the ship and prepared for transportation to Eiriksfjord in the summer. Soon after, the illness spread to Thorstein's household, and his wife Grimhild fell ill first. She was very large and strong, like a man, but the illness overcame her. Shortly after, Thorstein Eiríksson also fell ill, and they both lay bedridden. Grimhild, the wife of Thorstein the Black, died. When she died, Thorstein the Black went out to fetch a plank to place her body on. Gudrid said, "Stay away for a while, Thorstein." He agreed. Thorstein Eiríksson said, "There is something strange about our housekeeper. She is now sitting up on her elbow, moving her feet from the bed and groping for her shoes." Just then, Thorstein the Black came in, and Grimhild lay back down with a loud creaking sound throughout the house. Thorstein the Black made a coffin for Grimhild and took her away, preparing her for burial. He was a large and strong man and needed all his strength to move her out of the house. Thorstein Eiríksson's illness worsened, and he died. His wife Gudrid took it very hard. They were all in the living room. Gudrid had been sitting on a chair in front of the bench where her husband lay. Thorstein the Black took Gudrid off the chair, sat down on another bench with her, and comforted her in many ways, promising to take her to Eiriksfjord with her husband's body and that of his companions. "I will also bring other company here to keep you comforted and entertained." She thanked him. Thorstein Eiríksson then sat up and said, "Where is Gudrid?" He repeated this 3 times, but she remained silent. Then she asked Thorstein the Black, "Should I answer him or not?" He told her not to answer. Thorstein the Black then walked across the floor and sat on the chair while Gudrid sat on his knee. Thorstein the Black said, "What do you want, namesake?" Thorstein Eiríksson eventually replied, "I wish to tell Gudrid her future, so that she may better endure my death, because I have reached a good resting place. Gudrid, you will marry an Icelandic man, and you will have a long life together, with many descendants who will be prominent, beautiful, and of great repute. You will leave Greenland for Norway, and then Iceland, where you will build a home and live for a long time. You will outlive your husband, travel abroad, and make a pilgrimage south, returning to Iceland to your home. There, a church will be built, and you will take the veil and become a nun, where you will end your days." With that, Thorstein fell back, and his body was prepared and taken to the ship. Thorstein the Black fulfilled his promise to Gudrid. In the spring, he sold his land and livestock, boarded the ship with Gudrid and all his belongings, and sailed to Eiriksfjord. The bodies were buried at the church. Gudrid went to stay with Leif in Brattahlid, while Thorstein the Black made a home in Eiriksfjord and lived there until his death, known as a brave man. Chapter 7. Thorfinn Karlsefni's Journey to Vinland. That same summer, a ship arrived from Norway to Greenland. The man who led the ship was named Thorfinn Karlsefni, son of Thord Horsehead, son of Snorri, son of Thord from Hofti. Thorfinn Karlsefni was very wealthy and spent the winter in Brattahlid with Leif Eiriksson. He quickly fell in love with Gudrid and proposed to her. She referred the proposal to Leif, who gave his approval, and they were married that winter. The discussion about a voyage to Vinland resumed, and many people, including Gudrid and others, urged Karlsefni to undertake the journey. The voyage was decided upon, and he assembled a crew of 60 men and 5 women. Karlsefni and his crew made an agreement to share equally all the wealth they might acquire. They brought various livestock with them, as they intended to settle the land if possible. Karlsefni asked Leif for the use of his houses in Vinland, and Leif agreed to lend them but not give them away. They set sail and arrived safely at Leif's camp. They unloaded their belongings and soon found an abundance of resources, including a stranded whale, which provided plenty of food. Their livestock grazed on the land, but it wasn't long before their bull became unruly and caused disturbances. They had brought a bull with them. Karlsefni ordered timber to be cut and fashioned for their ship, placing it on a rock to dry. They benefited greatly from the land's resources, including grapes, game, and other supplies. After that first winter, summer came, and they encountered the Skraelings. A large group of people emerged from the forest near their cattle, and the bull began to bellow loudly. The Skraelings were frightened and fled with their burdens, which included grey pelts, sables, and various furs. They headed towards Karlsefni's camp, attempting to enter the buildings, but Karlsefni had the doors secured. Neither group understood the other's language. The Skraelings then unpacked their bundles, offering them for trade, especially desiring weapons, but Karlsefni forbade the sale of weapons. Karlsefni decided to show the Skraelings other goods instead and asked the women to bring out milk products, which the Skraelings were eager to trade for. The Skraelings took the goods away in their stomachs, while Karlsefni and his men kept their bundles and furs. The Skraelings left, satisfied with their trade. Karlsefni then ordered a strong palisade to be built around their camp. During this time, Gudrid gave birth to a son named Snorri. In the early part of the next winter, the Skraelings returned in larger numbers, bringing the same kind of goods as before. Karlsefni instructed the women to bring out the same type of food as before. When the Skraelings saw the food, they threw their bundles over the palisade. Gudrid was inside the doorway with Snorri in a cradle. Suddenly, a shadow appeared in the doorway, and a woman entered, dressed in a black cloak, of small stature, with a drawn hood, light brown hair, pale skin, and large eyes, larger than any seen in one person's head. She approached Gudrid and asked, "What is your name?" "I am called Gudrid. What is your name?" asked Gudrid. "I am also called Gudrid," the woman replied. Gudrid, the housewife, reached out her hand to invite her to sit next to her, but just then a loud crash was heard, and the woman vanished. At the same time, one of Karlsefni's men killed a Skraeling, attempting to take their weapons, causing the Skraelings to flee, leaving behind their clothing and goods. No one else saw the woman except Gudrid. Karlsefni then said, "We need to take measures, as I believe they will return a third time with hostilities and a larger force. We should have 10 men go to the promontory to show themselves, while the rest of us will go into the forest and clear an area for our cattle. We will also let our bull go ahead of us." There was a location designated for their encounter with water on one side and forest on the other. These measures were taken as Karlsefni planned. When the Skraelings arrived at the designated spot, a battle ensued, and many Skraelings were killed. One of the Skraelings, a large and fine-looking man whom Karlsefni thought might be their leader, picked up an axe, examined it for a while, and then struck one of his companions, who fell dead immediately. The large man then threw the axe into the sea as far as he could. The Skraelings then fled into the forest, each as fast as he could, and that was the end of their encounters. Karlsefni and his men stayed there the whole winter. In the spring, Karlsefni announced that he did not want to remain there any longer and wanted to return to Greenland. They prepared for the journey, taking many goods with them, including grapevines, berries and furs. They set sail and arrived safely at Eiriksfjord, where they spent the winter. Chapter 8. Freydis's Misdeed in Vinland. Once again, there is talk about a new journey to Vinland, as this journey seems both profitable and prestigious. That same summer, a ship arrived from Norway to Greenland, just as Karlsefni returned from Vinland. This ship was commanded by two brothers, Helgi and Finnbogi, who spent that winter in Greenland. These brothers were Icelanders by origin, hailing from the eastern fjords. It is to be noted that Freydis Eiriksdottir made preparations for her journey from Gards and went to meet with the brothers Helgi and Finnbogi. She asked them to accompany her to Vinland with their vessel and agreed to share half of all the profits obtained there. They agreed to this. From there, she went to see her brother Leif and asked him to give her the houses he had built in Vinland. He gave her the same response as before. He would lend the houses, but not give them away. An agreement was made between the brothers and Freydis that each would have 30 able-bodied men on board, plus women as well. However, Freydis immediately broke this agreement and secretly added 5 more men to her crew. The brothers did not find out until they arrived in Vinland. They set sail and had agreed beforehand to stay together if possible, though they arrived somewhat earlier than the brothers and brought their goods up to Leif's houses. When Freydis arrived on land, they unloaded their ship and brought their goods up to the houses. Freydis asked, "Why did you bring your goods up here?" "We thought," they replied, "that all agreements would be honored with us." "I dislike Leif's houses," she said, "but not you." Then Helgi said, "This will lead to a breach of trust between us," and they carried their goods out and built a hut for themselves, setting up the hut far from view on the beach and making good preparations. Freydis had a timber cut for her ship. Winter began, and the brothers spoke of starting games and having entertainment. This went on for a while until men quarreled more and more. A serious dispute arose between them, and they stopped playing games altogether. There was no more friendly interaction between the huts, and it continued this way for a long time. One early morning, Freydis got up from her bed, dressed, and did not put on her shoes, as the weather was so cold that there was heavy dewfall. She took her husband's cloak and went out, then walked to the brothers' huts and to the door. A man had just gone out a little earlier and locked the door behind him. She opened the door and stood there in the doorway for a while, silent. Finnbogi was inside the hut, awake. He said, "What do you want here, Freydis?" She replied with great force, "I went to negotiate with the brothers to buy a ship from them, and I wanted to buy more ships, but they reacted so badly that they beat me and treated me cruelly. You, wretched man, will neither seek my shame nor yours, and I will now find that I am leaving Greenland, and I will divorce you unless you take revenge." He did not withstand her charges, and he urged his men to stand up as quickly as possible and take up their weapons, and so they did, and they immediately went to the brothers' hut and went in with them to the sleeping rooms and took them and led out each one bound as they were bound. But Freydis had each man killed as they came out. Now all the men were killed there, but the women were left behind, and none of them wanted to kill them. Then Freydis said, "Give me an axe." This was done. Then she drove at 5 women who were there and killed them. Then they went to their hut after that great misdeed, and it was found out that Freydis thought she had done well. She said to her companions, "If we are able to come to Greenland, I will kill the man who tells about these events. We will now say that they lived here after we left." Now they prepared their ship early in the spring, the one the brothers had owned, with all the goods they could obtain, and they set sail into the sea, and were very fair winds, and came to Eric's fjord, their ship, early in the summer. Now Karlsefni was there, and had already prepared his ship for sea, and waited for wind, and it is the talk of men that a more profitable ship had not gone from Greenland than that which he commanded. Chapter 9. Thorfinn Karlsefni goes to Iceland. Freydis returned to her estate, for things had gone as she desired while her misdeeds remained hidden. She obtained a great deal of wealth from all her possessions because she wished to keep her misdeeds secret. She now resides at her estate. Not everyone kept silent about their misdeeds or malice, so eventually the matter came to Leif, her brother, and this tale seemed very evil to him. Leif then took 3 men from Freydis's crew and questioned them thoroughly about the entire incident, and their accounts matched each other. "I cannot bring myself," Leif said, "to treat my sister Freydis as she deserves, but I predict to them that their descendants will be of little prosperity." Thus, from then on, they were held in low regard by everyone. Now it is to be told about Karlsefni preparing his ship and sailing out to sea. His voyage went well, and he arrived in Norway safely. He stayed there over the winter, sold his wares, and had a good livelihood. Both he and his wife were among the most distinguished people in Norway. In the spring, he prepared his ship for Iceland. When he was ready, and his ship lay ready for departure at the docks, a southerner, descended from Brimir in Saxony, approached him and offered to buy Karlsefni's timber. "I do not want to sell," he said. "I will give you 1/2 mark of gold," said the southerner. Karlsefni thought this a good offer, and they made the exchange. The southerner took the timber away, but Karlsefni did not know what kind of wood it was. It turned out to be maple, brought from Vinland. Karlsefni sailed out to sea and reached the northern coast in Skagafjord. There he beached his ship for the winter. In the spring, he bought the land of Glaumbaya and settled there. He lived there for the rest of his life and became a very distinguished man. Many descendants trace their lineage back to him and his wife, Gudrida. After Karlsefni passed away, Gudrida took charge of the estate, along with their son Snorri, who was born in Vinland. When Snorri married, Gudrida left and travelled south, but later returned to Snorri's estate. He had a church built in Glaumbaya. Gudrida eventually became a nun and lived as a recluse for the rest of her days. Snorri had a son named Thorgeir, who was the father of Ingvild, the mother of Bishop Brander. Karlsefni's daughter Hallfrida married Runolfr, the father of Bishop Thorlakr. Karlsefni and Gudrida's son, Björn, was the father of Thorin, the mother of Bishop Bjarni. Many people are descended from Karlsefni, and he became a renowned man of noble lineage. It is through Karlsefni that the stories of all these expeditions have been recounted and remembered by all people to this day. Thank you for joining me for this reading of the Saga of the Greenlanders, a captivating tale from ancient Norse literature. If you enjoyed this reading, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel for more readings and explorations of ancient sagas, fairy tales and historical texts. If you have any suggestions for future readings or questions about this saga, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Stay tuned for more fascinating stories and explorations. Until next time, take care, and may your adventures be as epic as those of the Norse explorers. Once again, thank you, and I will see you all again very soon.